The moment I decided to join the clinical trial at Zenith Labs was born purely from desperation. As a second-year biology student with dreams of becoming a doctor, the weight of my student loans felt crushing. Every email notification of a payment due was a reminder of the financial hole I was digging myself deeper into. Participating in a clinical trial seemed like a quick way to alleviate some of that burden. I remember the morning I left for Zenith Labs vividly. The sky was a washed-out gray, mirroring my mixed feelings of hope and anxiety. As I boarded the shuttle that would take me to the remote facility, I couldn't shake off the eerie feeling of stepping into the unknown. The sleek design of the shuttle, with its soft, reclining seats and ambient lighting, was a stark contrast to the rusty buses I was used to back on campus. The drive to Zenith Labs took us through winding roads bordered by dense forests. With each mile, civilization seemed to fall further away, replaced by the wild, untamed beauty of nature. It was both breathtaking and a bit unsettling. When the facility finally came into view, its modern architecture stood out against the backdrop of the forest, like a scene from a futuristic movie. The building was a sprawling complex of glass and steel, its reflective surfaces gleaming under the occasional peek of sunlight through the clouds. Upon arrival, I was greeted by Dr. Clara Sterling, the overseer of the clinical trial. Her warm smile and firm handshake were reassuring, yet something in her eyes hinted at a steeliness that belied her outward charm. "Welcome to Zenith Labs, Benjamin. We're excited to have you join us," she had said, her voice smooth and confident. I nodded, trying to shake off the unease that settled in my stomach. The facility was even more impressive from the inside. It boasted amenities that rivaled those of a luxury hotel, with spacious lounges, an indoor pool, and rooms equipped with the latest technology. It was a comfort designed to put us at ease, but the high-security presence around the complex was a constant reminder that this was no ordinary retreat. During those first few days, I met other participants like Amelia, a talented art student from a small rural town who joked about the trial being her artist residency. Nathan, from Texas, shared his dreams of taking over his family's restaurant, his laughter infectious and his southern accent thick. And then there was Eliza, whose love for literature drew us into long conversations about our favorite books and authors. Despite our different backgrounds, our reasons for being here were similar: financial necessity. As we settled into a routine of daily medical tests and group activities, the initial fear of the unknown began to dissipate. The non-invasive nature of the tests and the staff's professional demeanor made the days bearable, even mundane at times. Yet there was an underlying current of tension that never fully went away, a silent acknowledgement among us that we were here not just for easy money, but because we felt we had no other choice. The luxury of the facility and the friendliness of the staff made it easy to forget why we were really there. But at night, when the lights dimmed and the forest outside seemed to press in on the glass walls, the reality of our situation crept back into my mind. I was here because I was desperate, trading my time, and in a way my body, for the promise of financial relief. It was a choice made out of necessity, but I couldn't help but wonder if the cost would be higher than I anticipated. As days turned into weeks, life at Zenith Labs settled into a predictable routine. Each morning began with a gentle wake-up call through the speakers in our rooms, followed by a series of blood draws and non-invasive scans. The medical tests, though repetitive, were painless and quick, performed by a professional staff who always greeted us with a smile. Despite the clinical nature of the procedures, the environment was designed to be as comfortable as possible, with serene music playing softly in the background and the rooms bathed in warm, soothing light. The facilities at Zenith Labs were nothing short of luxurious. I often spent my free hours exploring the various amenities. The indoor pool was a popular spot, its waters clear and inviting. I found it both ironic and unsettling how we could swim in such opulence while participating in a trial whose purposes we fully didn't understand. It was during these leisure times that I got to know the other participants better, forming bonds that felt both forged and real under the circumstances. Amelia became a close friend during these early days. Her bright artistic spirit contrasted sharply with the sterile environment of the lab. She told me stories of her small rural town, where everyone knew each other's names and life was simple but tough. "I'm here to break free from that," she confided during one of our late-night talks by the poolside. "Art is my escape, and this trial is just another medium, albeit a strange one." Nathan's company was equally uplifting. His passion for cooking led to impromptu discussions about recipes and food, which provided a much-needed distraction from the monotony of the lab. "When I get out of here, I'm going to open a place that serves nothing but the best Texan barbecue," he'd say with a laugh, his eyes alight with the dream of it. These moments of shared dreams and laughter were a comfort, a reminder of the world outside the lab's confines. Eliza and I bonded over our love for literature. In the evenings, we'd sit in the lounge, each with a book in hand, occasionally reading passages out loud to each other. Her insights into the characters and plots added depth to our conversations, and through these discussions, I saw the reflection of our own situation. Characters trapped in a story, uncertain of the ending. Yet, beneath the camaraderie and luxurious distractions, an undercurrent of unease ran deep. The facility's security measures were strict and omnipresent. Cameras monitored every hallway, and certain areas were strictly off-limits, guarded by security personnel who were polite but firm in their refusal to let anyone pass. The contrast between the openness of our group and the facility's hidden sections was jarring, a constant reminder that not all was as it seemed. The staff, always courteous and professional, maintained a friendly facade. Dr. Sterling, in particular, was a constant presence, her demeanor calm and reassuring. However, her eyes occasionally betrayed a sharpness, a calculating gaze that reminded me she was in control. It was during a casual conversation with her that I first felt a real shiver of doubt about the true nature of the trial. "We're all working towards a greater good here, Benjamin," she had said, her tone smooth as silk. "Sometimes, the path to innovation requires us to endure hardships." As the days passed, subtle changes began to occur. Some participants seemed less enthusiastic, their smiles forced. Whispered conversations hinted at unease about the tests becoming more invasive. The atmosphere shifted, the initial novelty of the facility wearing thin, exposing a layer of tension that lay beneath the surface. One night, as I lay awake in my room, the reality of our situation settled heavily upon me. We were not just volunteers. We were part of something much larger and possibly darker than any of us had imagined. The luxurious facade of Zenith Labs couldn't mask the growing suspicion that we were all pawns in a game whose rules we didn't fully understand. The fear of what lay ahead, of what was yet to be revealed, was a silent storm brewing on the horizon, waiting to break. The initial sense of novelty at Zenith Labs had worn off, replaced by a growing unease. It was subtle at first, just whispers among us participants. Someone wouldn't show up for breakfast, or a familiar face at the pool would be absent. The staff provided explanations that were vague and unsatisfactory. Illness, personal issues, or sudden departures. But the frequency of these disappearances started to build a palpable tension among us that could no longer be ignored. I began to notice the changes during our group sessions. Amelia, usually vibrant and chatty, grew quieter, her bright eyes often clouded with worry. Nathan's usual banter about his culinary dreams tapered off into silence during meals. And Eliza, she started to clutch her books a bit tighter, her conversations turning more introspective, almost as if she was distancing herself from the reality around us. One evening, after another unexplained disappearance, the unease finally turned to suspicion. "Have you noticed that some people just vanish, and no one talks about it?" Amelia whispered to me as we walked back from the dining hall. Her voice was low, tinged with fear. "It's like they're erased, Ben. No goodbyes, just gone." Fueled by this fear, I started to investigate. Late at night, when the hallways were quiet, I would wander close to the restricted areas. The heavy security doors and the constant surveillance didn't make it easy, but the need to know what was really happening pushed me to keep trying. One night, I found a service pass dropped by a janitor. It was my ticket to the other side of those locked doors. Using the pass, I managed to slip into one of the restricted zones. The stark, sterile corridor beyond was a sharp contrast to the luxurious amenities we were accustomed to. The silence here was oppressive, the air thick with the smell of disinfectant. As I moved cautiously, the sound of muffled voices drew me to a partially open door. Peering through the gap, my heart raced as I witnessed a scene that chilled me to the bone. Inside the room, a group of lab-coated staff were huddled around a monitor, discussing something in hushed, urgent tones. On the screen, images of what looked like human organs flashed by. Heart, liver, kidneys. It was clear the trial was a cover for something far more sinister. Rushing back to my room, the weight of what I'd discovered bore heavily on me. The next morning, I shared my findings with Amelia, Nathan, and Eliza. The revelation shattered any remaining illusions of safety. We were participants in a trial, yes, but the true experiment was far more horrific than any of us could have imagined. The internal conflict within me grew as fear wrestled with my sense of morality. I was here out of financial desperation, but now I was caught in a moral dilemma I hadn't anticipated. Could I simply turn a blind eye to what was happening? The answer came from deep within. No, I couldn't. We had to do something, but the question was, what? The days passed. Our group became a tight-knit unit of silent rebels. We met in secret, sharing any information we could gather, piecing together the grim reality of Zenith Labs. Our plan was simple yet fraught with danger: to gather enough evidence to expose the facility. Every stolen document, every covered photo, added to our growing dossier. But with each passing day, the risk of getting caught loomed larger, making every whispered conversation and stolen moment fraught with peril. That period was a test of our resolve, a daily balancing act between fear and the pursuit of truth. As we prepared to make our move, the reality of our situation was stark. We were not just fighting for ourselves, but for those who had disappeared, their fates unknown but easily imagined. The burden of this responsibility was heavy, but it was our only path forward. The storm we had sensed brewing was upon us, and we were right in its eye, ready or not. As the days melded into one another, our group's determination to uncover the full scope of Zenith Labs' sinister operations only intensified. The tipping point came one rainy evening when I managed to access an area of the lab that was strictly off-limits to participants. The corridors were starkly utilitarian, a stark contrast to the plush comforts we were accustomed to, and my heart pounded with every step. Inside one of the locked rooms, I found what I was dreadfully searching for: files and documents that laid bare the true purpose of Zenith Labs. It wasn't just about medical advancements or any benign research. It was a front for a lucrative organ trafficking ring. The files were explicit, detailing procurement processes, client lists, and even pricing. The horror of it washed over me in waves. We weren't just test subjects. We were potential inventory. I took as many photos as my shaking hands could manage before slipping out, the documents burning a hole in my conscience. When I shared the evidence with Amelia, Nathan, and Eliza, the air around us felt electrified with a mix of fear and fury. We need to expose them, Amelia said, her voice a whisper, but her resolve steel. No matter what it takes. Planning our next steps was fraught with paranoia. Every shadow seemed threatening, every staff member potentially an enemy. We agreed that I should confront Dr. Sterling, hoping perhaps to glean more information or even, naively, to appeal to any remaining shred of her morality. The confrontation with Dr. Sterling happened in her office, a room that always seemed too cold, too clinical. I presented her with the evidence, watching her face for any sign of remorse. But there was none. Instead, her expression hardened, her eyes glinting with a cold ferocity that I had not fully seen before. "You don't understand the complexities of our work here, Benjamin," she said, her voice calm but chilling. "You're meddling in affairs that are beyond your comprehension. Her threats were veiled but clear. I left her office with a heavy heart, the weight of her gaze on my back. The facility felt smaller, more oppressive. I realized then that our situation was more dangerous than I had ever imagined. We weren't just trapped in a sinister plot. We were ensnared in a web that extended far beyond the walls of Zenith Labs. That night, we gathered to discuss our findings and the chilling encounter with Dr. Sterling. Fear was a tangible thing among us, but so was the resolve. We couldn't leave. Escape was too risky and would only result in our disappearance like the others. The only way out was through exposing Zenith Labs, not just for us, but for the unknown number of victims who had already suffered at their hands. Our strategy had to be meticulous. We decided to smuggle out the evidence in increments, using any communication means at our disposal. Elisa, with her quiet demeanor and unexpected bravery, volunteered to reach out to a contact she trusted outside. We planned each move like a chess game, where any wrong step could be our last. During those tense days, our bonds strengthened. We were no longer just fellow participants. We were comrades in a fight against a monstrous injustice. The facility's plush corridors and luxurious amenities now seemed grotesque, a gilded cage hiding horrors beneath its polished surface. The reality of our predicament was harsh and unyielding. We were playing a dangerous game, but the stakes were too high to ignore. Each piece of evidence we secured felt like a small victory, a beacon of hope in the overwhelming darkness. Yet with each step forward, the shadow of Zenith Labs loomed larger, a reminder that the true battle was just beginning. The day we decided to make our escape was marked by a stormy sky, as if nature itself was aligning with the turmoil inside Zenith Labs. Our plan was precarious, relying on a mix of cunning and sheer luck. We knew the surveillance was tight and the staff vigilant, but desperation lent us a certain kind of courage that comes when there's nothing left to lose. Early in the morning, under the guise of our routine activities, we began to enact our plan. Nathan, with his charismatic and engaging personality, took on the role of distraction. He orchestrated a kitchen mishap that required immediate attention, drawing staff members into a frenzy of activity. This diversion gave Amelia and me just enough time to slip away from the prying eyes of the cameras. We moved stealthily through the less frequented parts of the facility, our every step fraught with tension. Amelia's hand gripped mine tightly, her presence a silent reminder of the solidarity that had formed among us. Our destination was the communications room, a place we had only heard of through whispered rumors among the staff. Reaching the communications room was a feat of its own. It was located in a secluded wing of the facility, heavily monitored and rarely accessed by participants. Using a stolen key card, we managed to enter. Inside, surrounded by screens and high-tech equipment, we found our gateway to the outside world. Elisa, with her calm and meticulous nature, had prepared a message detailing our plight and the horrifying truths about Zenith Labs. She transmitted the message through every channel available, sending out emails and uploading documents to cloud services. We were casting a wide net, hoping that someone somewhere would hear our call for help and act. The next part of our plan involved physically leaving the facility, a more daunting task than any of us had faced. As we regrouped to make our exit, the sound of alarms pierced the air. Our activities had not gone unnoticed. The building plunged into a state of emergency, with security personnel swarming towards our location. Adrenaline surged through us as we ran. The familiar hallways turned into a maze of panic and flashing lights. Dr. Sterling appeared, her face a mask of fury and determination. She was not just the overseer. She was the guardian of the facility's darkest secrets. Her pursuit was relentless, but so was our drive to escape. The confrontation with Dr. Sterling happened just as we reached the main exit. Nathan and I faced her as Amelia and Elisa pushed through the doors. Words were exchanged, pleas, threats, justifications, but they all fell on deaf ears. In a moment of sheer instinct, I managed to distract her, allowing the rest of us to slip past. The cold air outside hit us like a wave, The open space a stark contrast to the oppression we had endured inside. We ran through the forest that surrounded Zenith Labs, the trees a blur of green and gray. Our escape was not just a physical run for freedom, but a metaphorical rush towards a future we were uncertain we'd have. Every step away from the facility was a mix of fear and hope, the weight of our actions and their consequences heavy on our shoulders. As we finally cleared the perimeter, the distant sounds of sirens filled the air. Help was on its way, drawn by the chaos we had unleashed. We didn't stop running until we reached the main road, where the reality of our escape began to sink in. We were free, but at what cost? The battle to expose Zenith Labs was far from over. But for the moment, we had survived. Our bond, formed under the most harrowing of circumstances, was our greatest strength, and it would be our anchor as we faced whatever came next. The road was slick with rain, the darkness pierced only by the distant wail of sirens and our labored breaths. We had escaped Zenith Labs, but the chase was far from over. Our hearts raced as much from fear as from exertion. Freedom was close, yet it could still slip through our fingers. As we paused at the edge of the woods, catching our breath, the stark reality of our situation hit us. We were out, but not safe. The facility's influence was vast, and Dr. Sterling's reach long. We had to make a decision: split up to make it harder for them to track us, or stick together for strength in numbers. After a tense discussion, we chose to stay together, our bond a testament to our shared ordeal. We moved quickly and quietly, using the cover of night. Amelia, with her keen sense of direction, led us toward what we hoped would be a safe meeting point with the authorities. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a branch underfoot heightened our paranoia. The fear of being recaptured was a constant companion, urging us onward. Suddenly, headlights pierced the darkness ahead. We froze, hearts sinking, but to our relief, it was an unmarked police car. The cavalry had arrived, alerted by our distress signal from the lab. The officers were quick to usher us into the vehicle, their expressions a mix of concern and urgency. As we drove away, the silhouette of Zenith Labs loomed in the rearview mirror, a dark monument to our nightmares. The car ride was a blur of motion and emotion. We were safe, yet the adrenaline of escape left us jittery and on edge. The officers took our initial statements, their faces growing grimmer as we recounted the horrors of the facility. It was clear that this was bigger than any of us had imagined, a sinister web that extended beyond the confines of a single lab. Arriving at a secure location, we were met by federal agents, ready to take over our case. The gravity of the situation was evident in their somber demeanor and the flurry of activity around us. We were debriefed, our evidence cataloged, and our testimonies recorded. It was exhaustive yet necessary. Every detail could help dismantle the monstrous operation we had uncovered. Dr. Sterling was apprehended later that day. The confrontation at the facility had been the last in a series of escalating encounters. Her cold, calculating demeanor was gone, replaced by a sullen defiance. As she was led away in handcuffs, a part of me felt vindicated, yet the sight was strangely hollow. Justice was being served, but the scar she had inflicted would not heal easily. That evening, as we sat together in a quiet room, the full impact of our actions began to sink in. We had exposed a massive criminal enterprise, saved lives, and perhaps prevented countless others from suffering a similar fate. Yet, the cost was high. The personal toll it had taken on each of us was evident in our weary eyes and somber faces. As night turned to dawn, I reflected on the journey we had undertaken. It was not just a physical escape from a place of horror, but a mental and emotional odyssey that had changed us forever. We had started as strangers, bound by circumstance, and ended as comrades, bound by a shared mission to unveil the truth. The road ahead would be long and fraught with challenges. The trial, the public outcry, the media frenzy, all awaited us. But for now, we had a moment of peace, a brief respite to gather our strength for the battles to come. We had survived the darkest night, and with the dawn, we faced a new day with resilience and a renewed sense of purpose. As the dust settled on our daring escape and the ensuing chaos at Zenith Labs, a sense of unreal calm enveloped us. We were sequestered in a secure government facility, a temporary safe house that felt more like a gilded cage. Here, amid the clinical efficiency and soft-spoken agents, we were debriefed, counseled, and slowly reintroduced to a world we had almost forgotten. Days passed, blending into each other with a surreal quality. Our lives were no longer our own, tangled as they were in legal proceedings and endless interviews. The public outcry over the revelations about Zenith Labs was loud and far-reaching. Headlines screamed of betrayal and horror, of dark deeds done in the shadow of science. We, the unwitting participants turned whistleblowers, were thrust into an unwelcome spotlight. One evening, as I lay in my assigned room, the weight of everything pressing down on me, sleep proved elusive. My thoughts spiraled, replaying every harrowing moment, every narrow escape. The door to my room clicked open, and I sat up, heart racing. It was an agent, his expression grim. "There's something you need to see," he said simply. We moved through the silent halls of the facility to a secure viewing room. What I saw next on the screen froze my blood. It was footage from a hidden camera within Zenith Labs, dated after our escape. The scene was eerily familiar. The hallways, the labs, the very room where we had discovered the horrifying truth. But it was the figures in the footage that shook me. People I recognized. People who should have been safe. People like us. The realization hit me like a physical blow. Our escape had been orchestrated, a controlled burn to eliminate loose ends while preserving the facade of the facility's shutdown. Zenith Labs was far from crippled. It was alive, operational, and as malevolent as ever. The depth of the deception was staggering. We hadn't exposed the full extent of their operations. We had merely scratched the surface. The agent's voice broke through my shock. "We've been monitoring them since you brought us the initial evidence. This is bigger than we thought. Much bigger." The implication was clear and chilling. Our actions, while bold and brave, had been anticipated, managed into a narrative that still served the dark purposes of those truly in power. A new kind of fear settled in, different from the terror of captivity, but no less intense. It was the fear of knowing that the enemy was always one step ahead, that perhaps we were never truly meant to succeed. Our escape was just another part of their plan, a way to control the narrative and manipulate the outcome. As we were led back to our rooms, the facility no longer felt like a refuge, but a stage where we performed our roles in a play directed by unseen forces. The conversations that followed with Amelia, Nathan, and Eliza were filled with a new resolve. We had to fight back, to find a way to truly bring down Zenith Labs and those behind it. The days turned into weeks, and our strategy evolved. With the help of federal agents who shared our determination, we began to peel back the layers of conspiracy. Each revelation, each piece of uncovered evidence was a step towards the true emancipation from the shadow of Zenith Labs. The story I recount now is one of both despair and hope. It is a tale of deep darkness and the relentless search for light. We had thought our battle was over, but it had only just begun. The road ahead would be fraught with challenges, but our spirit was unbroken. As I write these words, my resolve strengthens. We will continue to fight, not just for ourselves, but for all those who remain in the shadows, waiting for salvation. Our journey is not yet complete, and our story not fully told, but I believe in our eventual victory, in the triumph of truth over deceit.